Friends, we come now to the B side of the laundry and taxes scene from Everything Everywhere All at Once, where I will explain why I associate it with mourning. Laundry was the first thing I wrote about for this class, and was the subject of the first poem I ever wrote, and so even as I attempted not to curate this playlist, the scene was always going to make it in. A big takeaway from this class for me was Ross talking about joy and delight as muscles we have to work, and Amy writing about wonder as something we have to reclaim. And so Everything Everywhere All at Once shows us that Waymond has a very strong delight muscle. He really would have found joy in those mundane things, maybe even grotesque things. Does anyone enjoy the feeling of paying their taxes? When revisiting this scene, I was also reminded of joy as defense, or as Ross suggested, joy as resistance and offense. The movie shows us this. Waymond thinks the same. He says to Evelyn, who he thinks of him as weak, he says, "This is how I fight." He fights like that. Waymond says that seeing the goodness of the world and in everyone is how he survives. It's how he resists. My first ever writing for the class was about how a Tide Pod looks like candy, but of course it will kill you to eat. And I was reminded of that when Ross connects laughing and dying. Mourning and love being linked by that is something I wanted to explore. Like I said in my MP1, skin in the game is mourning. Ross reminds us how we can't view joy and sorrow as opposites, and so perhaps we can't think of mourning and love as opposites. Waymond doesn't get the life of Waymond doesn't get the life of laundry and taxes that he might have wanted. I wrote it in my MP1, mourning the self, and perhaps that's what Waymond does here. He mourns for that quiet life with Evelyn and with his daughter that he doesn't get. The specific edit of the scene I included adds in a montage of earlier moments in the film, moments that show the earnestness of Waymond, and I was reminded of Beholding, how Ross can replay the image of that dunk over and over. In this montage, we can mourn over and over. I wrote in my MP1 about if we can mourn for what didn't happen, and this scene is my answer, I think. Yes. Waymond and the audience mourn that he doesn't get that life of laundry and taxes. The quote is beautiful, but as Ross reminds us in Feet, beautiful words are a poor substitute for a time machine to prevent mourning. But perhaps there doesn't need to be a desire to prevent mourning. In Everything Everywhere All at Once, Waymond doesn't say, "This is how I win." He just says, "This is how he fights." Waymond, and perhaps it's how we all can fight and resist, by doing what Ross says and what Waymond does, flex our muscles of joy and delight.